Welcome to another episode of Acme's Funniest Person podcast. I'm Bryan Miller, your host, and we're here talking about a comedy contest that's been going on over 30 years. It's an amateur contest that's produced some of the best comedy talent in the whole dang country. We've got another good season coming up, and we've got another contest coming up starting this spring. And we're here for a kind of a special episode here with Patrick Strait. Patrick Strait.
Thank you.
And we're going to be talking about the contest some, but we're going to be talking overall about Patrick's new book, Home Club, about Acme, right where we sit.
Yes, it's the history of Acme Comedy Company. Like you said, the 30, depending on when you're listening, it's like 34-year anniversary. And yeah, I mean, we have a whole chapter in there about the contest. You were actually really great. You helped kind of prove the historical importance of it by dictating it. So really, this is about us talking about how great you were to provide info for the book. But yes, this is just going to be one long infomercial for
This
the
is
book.
the circle jerkiest circle jerk of all time. We're talking
dude.
about how good I am, about your book, about the place where we're sitting. It's gonna
Last 15 minutes is just us kissing. That's going to be the whole thing. So it's going to be great.
That's how I end every podcast, though. That's why we get the big numbers.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but no, the book is great, and I wanted to. Well, we'll get back a little. But first, did you have the idea for the book after writing your last book? I assume that and what was the last book title?
Yeah, so last book, was called Funny Thing About Minnesota.
Funny Thing About Minnesota.
Yeah,
yes.
which was the kind of the whole history of Twin Cities stand-up comedy.
Right.
So from like the 1970s all the way through, probably through about the early to mid 2000s. And yeah, I mean, you know, there is a whole chapter in there about Acme, about Louis Lee when Louis first came on the scene.
Sure.
And you know, it's an interesting story, obviously. Just that story in and of itself of how Louis Lee and kind of the former Minnesota comedy kingpin Scott Hansen, how they got together and how they dramatically fell apart.
Sure.
So I wrote that book, and then I kind of looked at it like, you know, there's more story within the story. So, you know, that was a very important piece, I think, of all Twin Cities comedy. But, you know, I mean, I don't have to tell you. I mean, this club itself has its own history. It has its own importance. I kind of like to say, like, you know, if the first book was the Minnesota music story, this is like the First Avenue.
Sure.
Right? So,
That's
I mean, there's a
great way to
lot more stories within there. There's a lot more memories. And also, I think, you know, not to jump into it too fast, but Louis himself, Louis Lee, the owner of this club, I mean, his story is pretty incredible. So, I mean, you can write a whole book about him. And that was a lot of what this book is, too, is Louis's story along the way.
Yeah, there was a world where if the book was maybe it'd probably be a little shorter, but you could just blow out like the first half that's all about Louis and just get into a little bit more detail with his family, and like that would just straight up be an interesting story.
Oh yeah,
I didn't even know about the car crash when he was in the coma the first time.
Yeah,
from way back in I gotta ask him about the details of this truck running him off the road. That's wild.
It's interesting too because I knew he had gotten in the car crash because I learned that when I was doing the first book. I didn't know to what degree it was.
Yeah, I guess I
read
knew there was
one.
like I didn't know it was like really serious.
I didn't know he had like facial paralysis for a while and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, no, the book could very easily be Asian Sopranos if you wanted it to be. So there you go.
Yeah, it's super interesting, and the way the book is organized is really good. It starts we start with Louis, and then you get to the history of Acme, and then but it goes way up into, I mean, really basically the present. It goes through, I would say the kind of the bookending. The bookending story is sort of COVID and the recovery from COVID.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say?
I would say so. I mean, it was kind of interesting because that was kind of the intention was let's end with COVID and how the club came back because, you know, and I think a lot of people don't realize, I didn't realize until I started researching this, just how close we were to not being here for this club. Like this club was done. Like it was pretty much, it was signed, sealed, delivered. And so I was like, okay, well, that's a cool way to end it is it was going to be done and then it wasn't done. And then, not to put out his personal business, but then afterwards, you know, Louis got really, really ill within the last year or so. And that brought on a whole other element to this because it was kind of like the first time I think a lot of comics, and even he himself had to think about, like, what's Acme like without Louis? What's this club like when you no longer have Louis around? And I think that kind of added another interesting element and kind of ties the personal piece of this club back, which, you know, the club's important. I mean, Jackie Cation said this. I'm going to do so many name drops in this. It's going to be disgusting. No, Jackie Cation says, she goes, you know, the club is great. The club is, it's bricks and it's wood and it's pipes and it's everything else. She's like, you could tear that club down, though. She was like, if Louis is in a retirement home, she's like, I will go do jokes for Louis in the retirement home. She's like, and that will be performing at Acme for me. So really, she was kind of like, Louis is the spirit of the club, and the club is Louis, and they're one and the same. So that's why I kind of felt like that had to almost be the close of the book.
Absolutely, because I mean, I think what makes any club great is the synthesis of the physical elements. I mean, you know, you're looking around here, the sight lines are great, the lighting, the ceilings, and I've been to so many clubs all over the country, and so, you know, there's a couple that are this well laid out. I mean, literally a couple. You know, like Denver Comedy Works is famously similar, and Denver Comedy Works is also similar in that Wendy, who runs that, is sort of similar to Lewis in that like her tastes and her ideas of how it should run really dictate it, and that's the other component, because I've been to places that were physically perfectly laid out,
Sure,
and a disaster because the booking was bad and because the vibe was wrong and the philosophy was wrong. And then I've also seen people with some really good, smart ideas, but you're like, oh, but you're just in this spot that's just not great.
You're in the second floor of the mall. There's nothing you can do there. Yeah, I get you. So.
But if I was a betting man, I would always bet on the club run by the person with the foresight and the philosophy,
absolutely,
as opposed to the space. Like you can make a meh space really wonderful. But if you can also make a perfect location, terrible.
Oh,
if you just book the wrong comics, don't have the wait staff. And that's the thing I think that doesn't come, or maybe non-comics don't realize how important the whole staff is to like having first off great wait staff who are quietly. They're not interrupting the show, but they're keeping everybody happy. They're getting everybody drinks, and then the managers keeping the thing running, and the ushers who are keeping people quiet and keeping them off their phones. And all that only works if the place is a good enough place to work at, that the good waitresses and the good ushers and the good managers stay.
Oh yeah.
Because if you have a constant turnstile of just I'm just going to my job, regular employees,
right.
And every 6 months it turns over. I've been to plenty of clubs like that. One comes to mind. But when that happens, there's no one knows how to do their job because they've only been there briefly, and so just all those little things start breaking down, and then you find yourself on stage and like there's a heckler no one's dealing with, and the waitress is being really loud when she's taking drink orders, and the bar is not getting people drinks, and all that stuff can go awry.
Right.
So it's like it's a big machine. And part of I think the machine only runs if the people who work as a part of it are, people might be annoyed on a given night here or there, but generally enthusiastic about what they're doing and like actively trying to do a good job, which I know sounds weird, but it's more than just I think everybody who works here, it's more than just like, oh yeah, I sell some drinks.
You are so desperately trying to make sure that you get preferential treatment every time you come to this club. You're like, man, waitresses are great, wait staff, managers, bartenders, everybody's the best here.
I've already got preferential treatment.
Yeah, that's true. You're the man here.
I already get free drinks and good treatment.
That's true. You do. But one thing that's interesting that you said, and I think a lot of people don't realize, is this club was a comedy club before it was Acme. And that's what I think a lot of people don't recognize. And that's something we talk about in the book, too. And it's exactly what you just explained, right? I mean, there was a time where it's a great location, but it was just booked poorly. It was managed poorly. You had the wrong people who didn't really have a lot of foresight, who were here trying to just figure out, okay, well, how do I kind of make a quick cash grab? How do I get somebody in here? There's a story, I think I might have told it in the first, I don't remember which book now, but gosh, what's his name? Is it Paulson?
Pat Paulson.
Pat Paulson.
I thought that was fascinating that Pat Paulson was the big... So for people who don't know, Pat Paulson was a stand-up comedian in the 80s who was a very successful stand-up comedian, but was really mostly known for he would run for president every 4 years, and like kind of on a national scale. I mean, it was just a promo thing. I mean, it's kind of Fancy Ray does that.
I would say it's Fancy Ray. Yes.
Fancy Ray. He does not let a good gimmick go past him. He's a smart man. But I didn't know that. I guess the former, at some point when this was in transition from being, it was the Rib Tickler Comedy Magic Club at one point. So that's how it started. And then I thought that was interesting. There was that liminal period where multiple different people kind of tried to take it over and tried to, before Lewis was here, tried to make it work. And that one guy lost his shirt because he just put too big of a down payment on Pat Paulson, who didn't sell tickets.
Had high hopes for Pat Paulson. Apparently, Pat's not selling in Minnesota. I would love to know, like, when was the next time Pat Paulson came to Minnesota after that? I would love to know, like, where do you go when you can't fill this club? Like, is he, I don't know. I mean, if he's going to the mall, like, what is he doing? I mean, there were so many other places, like weirder, smaller experimental rooms that I feel like he would have been great in too. But I think also at that point, the nostalgia piece had kind of passed people by, right?
Yeah.
Where like you couldn't just sell in the like, oh man, I remember that guy's name. Like people wanted to see something unique and new and different. It wasn't just going to be like, okay, let's see the shtick that we're used to seeing. Like that wasn't going to do it. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting. And like you said, I mean, Rib Tickler was successful here for a while. I know the person who owned that decided he wanted to focus on being a full-time performer, so he moved on. And then you just had, I think, Lewis explained it to me as there was a group that owned this place that kind of almost looked at it like a country club, right? Where they were like, this was where they came and hung out and they drank and they had comedy through here, but nobody took comedy seriously. And Lewis, obviously, although it took some arm twisting to get him there, always took comedy very seriously, and he thought that the comedy needed to be presented a certain way. And that's the reason that we're sitting here in Acme Comedy Company, owned by Louis Lee, instead of, Phil and Dave's Comedy Chuckle Hut, owned by whoever the guy of the moment is. So there you go.
Yeah, and I think one thing the book gets into, I mean, it very specifically in one of the early chapters is that, like, Lewis had an idea of the kind of comedy he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And that wasn't always the most this remains true to this day. Not the most popular. There's always trends here or there in comedy, but like it wasn't like Lewis was like, just give me the guy who's going to fill the seats.
Right.
It was like, get me the guy or the gal who has the sensibility that's going to match what I want my audience to be, and if we keep doing that long enough, you'll build this audience, and the audience will come to expect better things, which will then enable the comics to do more interesting things.
Absolutely.
I think that's always been the philosophy, I think, kind of the club. And boy, it makes a difference. I mean, when you're up here telling jokes to this crowd, they're just better than a lot of crowds.
It's almost always been the philosophy of this club. I saved this story for you, Brian, for this particular moment. It's not in the book. It's not anywhere because I don't know. The thing when you do like one of these oral history books, right, is there's always hearsay. So you never really know which stories are 100% true and which is not. But this is one I've heard, and I can't prove it, but this is what I've been told. So as the story goes, tying back into why we're here today, talking about the contest, Dave Mordahl, as a lot of people have said, is legend, was the first winner of the contest. Yeah. There is a rumor that Dave Mordahl was not the first winner of the contest, and that he, in fact, lost to a woman who was doing barnyard animal impressions. I don't know if that's true. I've heard the story. I can't verify the story, but I've heard that because I know there was a class, and I think Dave might have actually done this too, and he doesn't get enough credit, honestly. I probably should give him more credit, that Stevie Ray did a stand-up comedy class, and that was kind of always the gateway early on. People do Stevie Ray's stand-up comedy class, they come down to Acme, they get on stage, and the rumor is that this woman was in Dave Mordahl's comedy class and just did like barnyard animal impressions, and that she won the very first contest. I don't know. I don't know if it's true. Dave Mordahl won't answer my calls. He's the only one who can tell me for sure. Did he win and start off on a pathway to comedy success? Or is there a lady out there who can do a killer goose impression who has Dave Mordahl's number? I don't know.
That's interesting because it's kind of like from The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, when the legend becomes overtakes the truth, you print the legend.
Exactly.
It might be true because people do. That's one thing that you find. I'm sure when we're going back over history, people just misremember stuff. Like it's great. I mean, there have been people who have sworn up and down to me that Andy Erickson won the contest.
Oh sure.
And I was like, she didn't. She got second. I was here. Yeah. I would know. I was here for it. And she got hired right after that, and she's great and everything. Now, if you ask Andy, she'll be like, "Yeah, I got second." She'll get a little frown on her face.
Who'd she lose to?
Rick Logan.
That's right, Rick Logan. Yes,
but because Andy's trajectory was really ascendant, and because she did very well in the contest, and because everything else kind of went on, that there's just a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, Andy won the contest.
Yes.
And that was, we're talking 15-ish years ago.
Yeah.
So like the farther you go back, you start realizing like people's memories are slippery. I mean, I don't even fully trust my own memory a lot of times.
We're getting old, Brian. We were talking about that before we were on the air here. We were like, oh man, how long has it been? 14, 15 years we've been hanging around here? So yeah.
Yeah, we started working together at City Pages 17 and a half years ago.
Gosh, is it that long?
Yeah.
Man, I'm closer to death than I am to birth.
You were in the first meeting that I sat in at City Pages. When we did the roundtable afternoon meetings, you came in to guest pitch some stuff. It was when you pitched the nudist colony retreat story.
Yeah, that sounds like me. Nothing. The most highbrow of the highbrow. Look at me now. The Historical Society is psyched that that's what's on the record. They're like, oh yeah, this is a guy we should invest our money
City
into.
Pages cover, if you're jumping naked on the...
Oh yeah, that's still out there. My parents were so proud. Yeah. But no, it's funny too. Also, I think it's important to point out, I also was in the contest the year that Rick Logan won.
Oh.
Also did not win, and I think it's important that everybody knows that I too. I mean, I don't think as many people remember me as winning the whole contest, but there might be a few.
Were you in the finals?
Oh, no, God, no. Are you kidding me? I was like on like the third night, first person out. Like,
so
no,
trust
me.
Rick beat you on your prelim round, basically.
I think everybody beat me.
Well, sure.
If you really want to look at it that way, but I believe Rick did in fact beat me on the prelim round. Yes.
This is something I wanted to ask you separately, so it's handy that we're doing this podcast. How much do you? How many times did you do stand up?
I would say less than 10. I mean, maybe.
Sure.
5, 6.
Okay.
I mean, I did the contest here a few times.
Yeah.
And I think, and you and I talked about this, in the past, and it was, I think I fell into that camp where, you have people who do this contest because they want to be comics. Like, they are like, this is the place, I can get a look, I can get seen, this is maybe my chance. And then you have other people who look at it like it is just a contest. They're like, oh
Yeah.
man, maybe I'll say something funny that night and it'll be cool to be on stage. I was very much in that camp.
Sure.
Like, I never had any like big dreams of comedy success or anything, which is also what you say when you lose the contest. If you win, then I'm
Of
like,
course.
I knew it from the start. But so I did that. I mean, I did open mic here a couple times, and then the funny thing is, I did open mic Galactic Pizza.
Oh
Remember
yeah,
Galactic Pizza?
I actually ran one of the first nights of Galactic
No
Pizza.
kidding.
Like
I didn't know that.
Sam Spadino was the guy who started that.
Okay.
Before, I can't think of the guy's name. Great guy, took it over. His name escapes me.
Mm-hmm.
But Spadino is rather famous for, he was the guy who got kicked out of the Trump rally in Duluth.
Really?
And then he was the guy who got arrested for shooting the Super Soakers at the
Okay.
pedal pubs.
Okay,
Spadino's
okay.
kind of like a, I mean this in a positive, like a petty activist.
Okay,
Kind
okay.
of a goofball activist. But Spadino actually started that Galactic Pizza mic.
Interesting.
And yeah, like the second or third week, he had to do some Sam Spadino business, and I ran that one.
Wow, yeah, I remember I did, and that was the only other place I did open mic at, and it was different than doing
Yes.
open mic here. And that was when I learned that there were levels to comedy open mics in town, because I'd only been here. I mean, like I said, when I first moved here, I came for a show, and I thought this was the coolest place in the world, and I saw there was a contest, and I signed up, and I did terrible, and that's fine. And I came to open mics, but, like, to me, even when I come to the open mics, it still very much felt like this was like a pro comedy show. Because, I mean, I don't know any
yeah.
of these people, but I mean, you're seeing Tommy Ryman was just starting out at that point. Amber Preston was starting out, and you'd see all these people who were really good, and you could come any other night of the week, and they're MCs or their features. So to me, I was like, wow, this is still the show. And Galactic Pizza was not that. So, yeah, that's when I learned that, sometimes open mic it's about those reps. That's the deal, right? So yeah, I would say less than 10 total, and that sent my comedy career out to die, I guess is what I'll say.
But do you think having even done it even a few times helped you kind of understand stand-up better to be able to write about it?
I think so. I mean, I always like to make the joke. I never wanted to be the sports radio guy who's never stepped on the field before.
Sure.
Like, I never wanted to be that guy who could sit up here and be like, Bryan, let's wax intellectual about comedy. And you're like, you've never done this before. Like, go sit down in the crowd. So I can say I did it, and I think I never did badly. This is what I'll say. And this is also something I feel like most people will say to you if they probably did terrible. But I also never had that moment. Like, you've said this. I mean, a lot of comics have said this to me, that the first time they got on stage for an open mic or for the contest or whatever, even if they got one laugh, it was like something clicked and they were like, oh, that was it. Like, that's what I need. Like, that was the feeling that they were like, I need to chase that forever, right?
Yeah.
I never got that. Like, I got a couple laughs. I did okay. I don't think I was real memorable. But, like, I never got off stage like, wow, like, I got that electricity. And I think that's probably why, why I would never have carried on to be a comic, because I think you need to have that. And B, I think why I'm probably better suited to talk about comedy, because I think if I had that fire, electric, like, I feel like too much of, like, my own kind of, like, little bit of want to be a comic would seep in. And I feel like you can't have that if you're trying to be as objective as you can. I mean, I always give you credit, because talking about City Pages, you never really, for the most part, you never really wrote about comedy. You never really covered comedy for City Pages.
They didn't really want me to.
Well, that's, there's always that too. But yeah.
Debatable, but whatever.
But
I
like,
love all those people.
But you were also really close to it, where it's like,
Yeah.
but I mean, even if you don't want to, it's like, yeah, but this is who you want to be. You want to be in this world, and you can feel that sometimes. I didn't want to be a part of that world. Not that I didn't want to be a part of the world, but like, I wasn't trying to do that as a career. So
yeah. It's the way you describe stand-up is the way I describe gambling to people. I don't like to gamble, and a couple of times I've played some blackjack. A couple of times in my life, or played some slots, and I'd pull the lever and like $20 would come out, and people would go woo, and I'd just be like, yeah, well, I mean, I didn't really earn that. I don't know, I got nothing from it. Just like I don't get that buzz. I don't get the excitement of it. So like, why would I go gamble?
Yeah. See, I would much rather gamble than do comedy, because it feels something inside, Bryan.
Yeah, see, I feel nothing about gambling, but the comedy, obviously, I did. But
totally. No, I get that. I think that's a good analogy, honestly, yeah.
But I think, I really do think that if someone's done comedy even 2 or 3 times, there's an element you can't truly understand stand-up unless you've done it a couple times. You can understand it intellectually, you can be a critic and all this stuff, but like, there's something about hearing your name, walking out, looking up, taking the mic out, all that stuff that you're like, ooh, there's a little part of it I get now that I couldn't have gotten before.
Oh yeah. Well, and the other thing too, and I mean, I just got done saying, like, I never did bad, but I also think, to that point, I think you have to, it's almost like you have to realize, like, how hard it is. And I don't mean how hard it is in terms of like getting over the stage fright and in terms of like, oh, there's so many people here. Like, you got to get your ass kicked a little bit. Even if you don't bomb, you got to feel the pressure, and you got to feel when you make that first joke that you feel really good about the person sitting there just arms crossed. Like, you have to be like, ooh, like this could really seep into my brain and change me for the worse. Like, I need this so badly. And I feel like you need that to understand, because I feel like if you've never gone through that, if you talk to a comic, you know, because I've talked to a lot of comics, yourself included, who, you know, you have a bad set or you have a bad open mic. You're at the point now in your career that you can walk off and be like, all right, that one sucked, but you just chalk it up and you move on. And I think that if you've never gone through it, you're like, well, yeah, of course not. I mean, it was only 3 minutes of your life. What would you care? But once you've been there, you're like, you can live and die on that feeling, man. And I think you have to know that to really appreciate, like, there's balls that go into getting up here and doing this. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that. And I think you need to know that to fully respect and appreciate the art form.
Yeah, I mean, I do brush off a bad set now. Luckily, I have so many of them. I've gotten used to it. But really, there is that element of like I remember the first time I ever did stand up and like bombed. I mean, I got like heckled and whatever, and I went home and I kicked a closet door out of the door frame. And my wife came home and the closet door was just laying in the hallway with these wood splinters everywhere, and she just looked at me and she's like, "Didn't go well?" And I was like, "No, it did not go well."
See, usually that's reserved for a big gambling loss. So you really do have a lot of parallels there. Yeah. It's like, sorry, lost our mortgage. And it's like, no, just had a bad 3 minutes, you know?
And luckily, I had to pay for the door. Remember the landlord came over. He was a buddy of mine. The landlord came over and is like, what happened to the door? And I was like, we don't need to talk about it. Just tell me what I need to pay you to get the door put back on. And he was cool about it.
Oh, that's awesome. How many people do you think, and now I'm turning this in here, how many people do you think have had that, like, meltdown here? Like, in the club, like, literally got off stage and like went into the bathroom or went into the back or wherever they were and just had that like where they just lost their minds.
I've seen people weeping intensely in the green room or outside. Yeah. I've seen people. I mean, and there's kind of layers of it. I mean,
absolutely.
I feel like usually with the contest, it's a less so because you don't have that much skin in the game yet. It's still a new thing, so like you maybe not be used to the feeling of having maybe struggled a little bit. Yeah. It's usually when you see people get really upset, it's because they've been going to a lot of open mics. Yes. They've been, so they've already got some investment in it. Yeah. And so then they really have an appreciation of like, oh, I had a great 3-minute opportunity and I blew it, or whatever. No, I've definitely seen some people. Yeah. I mean, not just here. I mean, I've seen, but probably here more often than not, just from having done the open mic here for 16, 17 years.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's the thing is, I mean, I don't think I ever had that level of visceral reaction because, like you said, I never had that much skin in the game in the first place. But I feel like you have to know, like, what that adrenaline dump is like to be like, oh, man, I just put all my hopes and dreams up in front of these people and I got nothing. And then to have to be like, yeah, I can come back again tomorrow and try it again. Like, I think to really, like, talk about it and not just like, whoa, funny man tells jokes this Friday night. Like, you got to know what that feels like because I think you have to – there's a level of respect I think you need to have for that, and I don't know that you always get that level of respect for performers until you've tried it.
Yes, absolutely. It's like anybody who's made a movie that I know of who always says after that they respect anybody who finishes any movie. Just for having finished it. I had an old, I have a great Larry Heineman, an amazing writer. He won the National Book Award. He was my writing professor in college. And he used to say to us about any book, he goes, whenever you read anybody's book, whatever you think about it, you've got to respect the fucking typing. I always thought that was really funny. And he was like a nom-vet. Like, he was like the shit. Yeah. But he would say, you got to respect the fucking typing. And I kind of feel that way about comedy, even when I see people who maybe haven't gotten much better in a year or two, but they're grinding. It's like, man, it ain't easy to keep coming out every night and putting that name down and trying to write new jokes and getting getting pushed around on stage a little bit. Like, it's hard.
Oh yeah.
But I think if you like the good part of it, then you're like, oh, well, the reward is worth it.
Absolutely.
And it mostly is. It mostly shakes out that way anyway.
Totally. No, I get that. So,
what were some of the things that most surprised you, or maybe the thing that most surprised you about learning the history of Acme?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things. Number one, I think it was. We touched on a little bit that there was this kind of very soft, squishy period in between this being like the Rib Tickler, which was fairly successful, and becoming Acme, that it was just kind of a comedy no man's land. I mean, anybody who's ever been here knows, like, this is not a good location for like a foot traffic business.
And now it is a kind of a Tony location now with all these beautiful the condos and the things and the businesses. But even when I started, which was 17, 18 years ago, I mean, it wasn't like a bad neighborhood, but there was nothing else down here.
Yes.
I mean, Acme was basically the end of the line.
Yes.
If you were riding through an old west town, it was like you would ride by Acme, and after that, it was just the prairie. You know,
Right,
like,
yeah.
This was it. It was the end of the line. You had to
Absolutely.
come here on purpose.
Yes. So I think like that was very interesting to me because I mean I think we all romanticize this where it's like, well, yeah, you come here because it's a destination. It wasn't always that way, and it wasn't also in a period where people were just so psyched to come and see comedy that they were rushing out to it like it was maybe in the 80s. So
Yeah.
to learn about what that period was like was what I thought was interesting. And then the other piece is, and I kind of talked about this in the book too, I think learning just how closely Louis Lee and Acme Comedy Company are interchangeable with each other was impressive to me. And what I mean by that is, so when I started writing this book, right, I had a very specific idea of what this book was going to be and all these cool stories about Acme. And I started researching it, and I started writing it, and honestly, I didn't really like it. And it wasn't that it was, like, bad. It wasn't that the interviews were bad. It wasn't that sort of, but everything kind of felt the same. It was like, oh, man, and then this person was here, and their big quote is like, yeah, I could try whatever I wanted, and, you know, the audience was great.
It's like all happy families are the same.
Yeah.
All unhappy families are different. The famous Russian quote.
Yes.
Everybody you're interviewing is a professional comic.
Exactly.
It's like I always say, like, not to be in a tangent, but whenever they interview an athlete or something, he goes, well, praise be to God. God wanted me to be here to win the Super Bowl. I'm like, no, we should ask the losers about God. Ask what the losers think about God right
Yes.
now. It is the thing that we're, you know, when you see actors interviewed, if you just believe in yourself and you keep working, then you'll make it. And it's like, why don't we ask some people a 75-year-old waiter in Hollywood who never got anything more than some background work? What do you think?
Yes.
Some of those people worked really hard and they did not make it.
Absolutely.
So when you're interviewing all the people that did, there is in a way, there's a sameness because like the truth of it is like you really can say what you want on stage here.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about like having one bad set, you know, which in a lot of comedy clubs it's like, you didn't do that well, we don't want him back. And it was like, it was the Thursday show. I did good at all the other shows. What was wrong? You know? So there is going to be a sameness. So I can see where in a certain way it would be like, there's no dramatic tension to that, right?
No, exactly. And I think it's until you start to learn about Louis, that's when it starts to become an interesting story because you're like, okay, you have this guy who immigrated from Hong Kong as a teenager who had never seen a comedy show until he was in Minnesota, didn't understand half of the comedy the first time he saw it, and somehow has created this atmosphere, stuck to his guns as a business owner too, where he's like, no, it's more important to me to allow this creative process to flow. Like, it sounds so easy when you're sitting in a successful business, but when you're living paycheck to paycheck, to be like, yeah, you know, Tim Slagle walked 240 people last week. Yeah, you know what? Let's have him back again. It's like, what are you thinking? Like, you have to pay bills here, man. So I think to start to understand how he got to that point, to start to understand him, that's the most interesting thing because, you know, not for nothing, you know, everybody, those who've met Louis, you know he can be quiet, he can be kind of reserved. He's a rebel. Like, he's a rebellious guy, and you have to be to have a comedy club that functions that way. And you know better than me, I'm preaching the choir here. There's comedy clubs that are great. Like, I've been to some awesome clubs, and they know they've got to do things because it pays the bills. You got to have the 60-second TikTok comic. You got to get up there and hawk chicken wings. You got to do these things because it's still a business at the end of the day. And Louis was doing stuff that would literally make you scratch your head and say, this is bad business. Why are you doing this? But to hear him talk in that book about, well, here's why I did it, and here's how I got there, and to even hear about some of those decisions that he knew, like, this might not be a good decision, but I feel like it's the right way for the long run, like, that's impressive to me, because I don't know that I would necessarily have had the guts to do that or to stick it out like that, you know? And that's everything from, you know, early on, he talks about, you know, he was doing, when he was losing money, you know, hand over fist, he was, that's not the expression, but when he was losing money, he's doing still charity shows for, you know, like the Aliveness Project, which is the big LGBT AIDS organization in town. Like, and he's giving money to them. And I'm like, why are you doing these donations, especially for organizations that at that point are still considered a little bit controversial or taboo and things like that?
That's
like,
one of those things like gay rights where now it seems just like, well, obviously, but you're like, if you were around in the 90s, there was like an edge to that. Like,
I'm saying,
really, like it was, You're
having a fundraiser for a gay rights organization in the 90s. It's like,
which is awesome. I mean,
it's great.
Way ahead of the curve.
But at the same time, for the average consumer at that point, you know, they're like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, I don't know if that's something I go to because we just, you know, we didn't understand things. And
and you're trying to get people from the suburbs to come in
exactly.
and do these shows and stuff.
So he's doing that stuff right when he's first open, you know? I mean, the comics he's bringing in, you know, he had the opportunity to bring in people who were on SNL. Like he had a lot of SNL names that were presented to him in like the mid '90s. You remember when they kind of started? I was looking at the mid '90s, like that was my like boom period when I discovered SNL. You know?
Yeah, it's kind of mine too. We're almost exactly the same
exactly.
age, yeah.
And so that's when, and he had a lot of those opportunities, and he turned them down. Like you would have had people, rushing the doors to see some of those names back then, but he was like, they can't fill a headliner set. I'm not gonna bring him in. And that's crazy because even now club owners don't think that way. They're like, I know this person can fill a room, so let's do a weekend with him. Exactly. I mean, that's a crazy thing for him to do. I mean, there's so many different examples through that book, all the way up until, like you said, jumping way ahead, this contest, which I think you and I talked a lot about, the way that he chose to run the contest, which you actually gave me a great quote. Again, big circle jerk here, but you talked about how for a lot of clubs, a contest is a great way to kind of coast through the summer. It's how you get people in the door. It's how you make a little money. It's how you keep expenses low. But he's presented in a way where, no, this is part of that whole feeder system. It's about getting new people exposed to the club and really showing them that, like, hey, look at the quality of comedians that you can see here. Yeah, we also have the contest folks, but we're not just going to show you 20 contest kids in one night. We're going to show you a professional comedy show and hopefully bring you back in. Like, that's essentially giving away money, and that's something that a lot of established, successful businesses don't do, let alone somebody who's living moment to moment in their career. So I think my very long-winded answer is I think learning about what makes Louis Lee a very rebellious, disruptive business owner, person. I think, he has a very much an artist's heart, I think, in that he does care more about like, hey, I want people to walk away and be like, I know I got a quality show out of there, whether they liked it or not, as opposed to being like, yeah, I got the McDonald's experience of comedy. Like, it was good, but I'm not going to remember it next week. Like, that was a cool thing for me to learn more about.
Yeah, the short-term thinking version of a contest is you go, okay, during the summer weeks, we're going to do that, where I have a contest where it's all the contestants, 20 contestants, and they will bring people, like their mom and dad and their office mates will buy tickets, but they're not going to come back. That's going to be a one-time thing. Yes. They're going to go, yeah, I saw, it was nice, my buddy, he got third, it was cool. Anyway, but when you bring people in for the contest, and then afterwards it's like, oh, and then, by the way, then Lori Kilmartin is going to do, you're going to get to watch her for 45 minutes, or Dana Gould or something, and you're going to be like, oh, wow. Like, you get this. Yes. I think it also helps give the perspective on the contest, because the contest is a true amateur contest. So you have people at the very lowest rung, and then you see someone like Lori or Dana, for perfect examples, you go, well, that's about the highest rung it gets as an artist. Like those are two of the best joke writers and funniest people. Oh, and so to see that contrast helps kind of put everything into context.
Very much,
a little bit, and I think it makes the contestants sort of more sympathetic, because you're like, oh wow, it must be really hard to get there. Yeah. After you've seen, like, the MC was pretty good, and the couple of the contestants were a little shaky. Yeah. It gives you the whole like panorama perspective.
Absolutely. Well, and I mean, all the respect in the world to anybody who gets up here and does it as a contestant, but I think that also it keeps people who are maybe they've never gone to comedy shows, they're not in that kind of world, from lumping everybody together as a like, oh yeah, like because you don't know any better, right? I mean, the first time I came here, I didn't know the difference between an MC and where they're at in their career versus a headliner. I'm just like, oh, it's the comedy crew, and they just all roll in a van together or something, right? And I remember, I want to say it was Wendy Liebman, I think, was headlining here.
Love Wendy Liebman.
Yeah, I think she was the headliner here. One of the times there was a contest final. And it was the first time that I ever was like, oh, there's levels here. Because I remember, like, half of the contestants did really well. I remember, I think I was a judge that night, and I was like, yeah, this was a really funny group. And then Wendy got up, and I was like, oh, these guys have a long way to go. And it was cool, because I think if you hadn't seen a comedy show before, you weren't like, oh, yeah, I've kind of seen it. I could do that. The I could do that, guys. Because you see Wendy Liebman get up, and you're like, I can't do that. No, I can't. Maybe I can do the 3 minutes that somebody else got up here and was able to kind of stumble through, but I can't do what she does.
Yeah,
I think it's important
to know
18
that. 18 jokes in 3 minutes.
Exactly.
It's insane.
Exactly. So that's why I think it's cool. And I think the other thing too, which I think is really interesting, that you talked about, is I know a lot of times contests, their prize will be, you get a week of feature work, or oh, you're going to be here. And they don't do that here. Like, you're promised nothing when you win this contest. And I think
you
that's
get
cool.
$1,000 and it's like,
exactly.
Phil HW9, see you later. we hope to see you at the open mic on Tuesday.
And I think that's cool. And I think that speaks to it too, though, because like it would be easy to be like, oh man, this kid brought in 40 people for this show. Your first thought is like, yeah, we can bring him up here a couple more times. Don't bring in people. Lose doesn't care. You bring in 100 people, you still potentially lose to somebody, and like, even if you win, you're not getting up necessarily unless you're coming back and you're putting in the time and the work. And like, that's different too. Like, these are all things that I think make the club unique. It makes the contest unique. It makes the man unique. I mean, all this is very unique is going to be my word of the day.
Sure.
But yeah, I think that's definitely, that's very interesting. That's exciting to me. And that's where I think you start to see, oh, this really is different. This isn't just another comedy club. Like, it is definitely a mindset and very much a presentation that's not the same comedy worldwide.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So to wrap it up here, since this is the contest, the Funniest Person Contest podcast, one other question I wanted to ask you, because you are a judge, very frequently judge in the contest. So as a judge, what is your advice to contestants?
I think my biggest advice is, and this is just, I can only speak to what's interesting to me.
Sure.
I think do what's going to set you apart from a comedy standpoint, even if it isn't necessarily going to get the biggest pop. And what I mean by that is, there are people I've seen come in here who will do big act outs in physical comedy and they'll kill for their night or for the finals. And I know for me, I don't necessarily give those people as high a marks as I do to somebody like who were some of the finals asked? I mean, Aiden, who I know is going to be on the show. So yeah, like he was doing, I think, what was her name? Alexa Kaczynski. I know she does something that's really interesting. But people who are doing very unique stuff that I'm like, I've never seen that before. And I would be curious I want to know more about that. Like, I want to see to keep going. Whereas if it's somebody who gets in there and is just like, whoa, so I was trying to have sex with my wife the other night and she was like, not this time. And I was like, oh, I guess it's back to my hands again. Like, okay, that might blow up the crowd, but like, I'm not interested in that. So I feel like you got to be true to yourself comedy-wise. And the other thing, which I think would be my only advice, would be slow down. And I need that advice in life. But I remember that was the advice I was given the first time I did the contest. They were like, you need to slow down, because Wendy Liebman can tell 18 jokes in 3 minutes. If Patrick Strait tells 18 jokes in 3 minutes, you don't know what the hell I just said.
Yeah,
so
that's because she's doing it with like massive word economy.
Yes.
It's not like she's on 2x speed on like a podcast.
I'm the Micro Machine guy. I'm
just
like, let's talk about another thing. Yeah, so, I mean, come on.
Yeah, you're right. That adrenaline hits, and no matter, I always, and this is even true for me, even still, I'll make a note sometimes to be like, all right, I'm going to try to go a little slower this time.
Yeah.
Slow it down. And I'll listen back to the recording, and I'll be like, yeah, it still could have been slower. You know? One of the best shows I had was in a certain way. I did this fundraiser a couple of years ago, and Ryan Call was opening for me, and we got there and realized that their microphone system was so bad that it effectively didn't work. It was like a bad like overhead, like the speakers in the roofs of the hotel thing, and it came out all fuzzy. And so we basically realized we were going to have to shout our jokes and use the microphone as essentially a prop. Like, hold the microphone way down here. Well, the only way to do that was to go kind of slow, because you have to talk really loud and enunciate everything.
Yeah.
And it went great. And I listened back to the tape, and I was like, that's the speed I should be at all the time.
Right?
But maybe not, with the microphone.
Yeah. It's the dramatic build. I feel like, and I mean, I'm guilty of this. I've probably done it while we've been talking during this podcast. But it's like, you get so focused on telling every detail of the story that part of the story is like stretching out and making people excited and interested and all that builds into it. And I'm very bad at that. I want to tell you as many words as I possibly can inside of this much time. So, yeah.
No, I think that's good advice, because, I mean, most people can do it to slow down, and almost anybody who's not done it a lot is going to have adrenaline rush.
Oh, yeah.
And you are going to be talking faster than you realize.
Oh, yeah. And honestly, just drink as much as you can seems like good advice, right?
That always goes great.
We
for
talked
people,
about
right?
this beforehand. Yeah. I mean, if you have to be led to the stage, I mean, you're probably going to crush. Like, that's honestly, it's that sweet spot of creativity meets crowd appeal. When you're like, like, that's my guy right there. Straight to the top. So.
Well, great. Well, anything else you want to add? So the book, when is the official release date of the book?
Yeah, depending on when this is out. I mean, March 25th is the official release date.
Oh, we'll have it out before then.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, it'll be out. It's through the Minnesota Historical Society Press. So, I mean, it's obviously at the History Center. It's at, bookstores all over town, independent bookstores all over town. You can get it through Amazon. You can give Big Daddy Bezos your money, whatever matters.
Go to Majors and Quinn, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Or go to Moon Palace.
So,
go there.
Yes, my thing is, I'm like, hey, listen, support local bookstores, but if you find it at a big bookstore and you steal it, the book is already out there now. And so really you're helping the Historical Society, because they got to ship more copies. So, hey, steal from the big guys and support your locals. That's what I like to say.
So the 25th was the release date, and then, of course, the 26th of March, there's going to be a book release event here at Acme. For the book, that's going to be a big fun show.
It's going to be wild. For the first time, maybe last time and only time, Louis Lee will be on stage telling his stories for himself. So we will actually get to hear from the man. on the 26th, and he might regret it, but we're going to at least get him one time.
Well, that's great. So, March 26th, we'll have the book release event. The book comes out on the 25th. You can get your copies. You can pre-order it right now, I'm sure.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
So pre-order right now if you're sure. It's called Home Club. The author is Patrick Strait. My guest, thanks so much for coming out,
Hey,
Patrick.
thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, we'll see you soon.